Hi everyone, welcome back to the Michael J. Fox filmography, and thank you for taking your own time out to check out this movie review, where the next entry on the Michael J. Fox filmography is a movie that came out in February of 1987, and it's called Light of Day. I haven't actually seen it before, so this is definitely another entry into the Michael J. Fox filmography where it's a first time viewing for myself, but I did know that it starred Michael J. Fox and Joan Jett, so I was like, okay, well, that's an interesting combination for sure, and I wasn't really too sure how that would have even came around, but after doing some research, there's definitely some interesting elements behind the scenes of this, because this movie is directed by Paul Schrader, if I pronounce that correctly, and he has, when I looked up, not very many filmography where I know the titles of movies he's directed, but I know about two movies that he's written. I've not seen them, but I've heard of them at least, and that is Taxi Driver and Raging Bull. In this movie, the cast of Light of Day includes Michael J. Fox, who plays Joe Rasnick, Joan Jett, who plays Pat Rasnick, Gena, Rowlands, who plays Jeanette Rasnick, and appearances from Thomas G. Waits, Cherry Jones, Michael Dolan, a young Trent Reznor from the band 9 Inch Nails that many people may know of, the fabulous Thunderbirds, Exotic Birds, and Michael Rooker. So what is Light of Day all around? Well, it's essentially around a brother and sister, Pat and Joe, played by Michael J. Fox and Joan Jett, who are in a band. They want to make it as big musicians, but in the meantime, there's issues on in their family that it's kind of debating, well, what is going to come first and what's more important, family or music career. So just before I dive into any of my positives and negatives, let me just give you a little bit of a backstory about this movie and why it's very, very interesting. So Paul Schrader originally had this movie planned and was going to call it Born in the USA, and of course was going to star Bruce Springsteen, and I think his plan was Bruce Springsteen and Joan Jett to appear in this movie. Now Bruce Springsteen did write the theme for this called Light of Day, but he decided at the last moment he didn't want to do the movie. So what ultimately happened was the studio were adamant to cast Michael J. Fox. Now, of course, by this point, he was writing of Back to the Future. That name alone drew money, so they wanted Michael J. Fox. So he was casted, and this is his first, more known as serious role that he ever did, and I will get into that very shortly. But Michael J. Fox has gone on record later and said that in this movie he felt like he was miscast himself in this and wasn't really the type of character that maybe Paul Schrader wanted him to play. So with all that in mind, there was also a point where Joan Jett also had disagreements with Paul Schrader at some points, saying about some musical songs and this is how it should be performed differently. Yeah, ultimately she got her way because he actually turned around and realised she was right. So there's definitely a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes before we even get into the movie. So with that in mind, the positives of The Light of Day is definitely the soundtrack, because it is a rock soundtrack for sure. And if you're a big fan of Joan Jett, you're probably going to love the soundtrack. It does also feature songs from Bon Jovi, Bruce Springsteen, and a couple of other artists as well. So it's not a full Joan Jett soundtrack. It is a good rock soundtrack. The music itself is really one of the best key elements to the entire movie, and what's kind of really kept me enthralled in it, because I really loved the musical soundtrack in it, and I really loved the beats. I really loved that this band was performing these songs, and I was like, well, okay, I'm not really into rock myself, but if I was there, I would probably have a good time listening to that music. It wasn't terrible. I actually quite enjoyed it. And I would say, in terms of a Michael J. Fox more serious role, he definitely does provide a serious tone to his acting in this movie compared to, say, Back to the Future. Many other movies I've covered already in this filmography. I would say, however, I kind of do agree in terms of like his miscasting, but what I will give credit to is the fact that I felt like he did portray more of a serious role, and some of those serious moments I actually found enjoyable, and I was like, wow, this guy really does have a big range, despite we mostly known him for, say, Back to the Future and Teen Wolf, and more of like the comedic, really charming persona that we see from him quite a lot. And I believe this is one of the very few movies that he actually smokes on camera, which is also a very interesting fact as well. And Joan Jett, at time, her acting, it's okay. It's not too bad. Of course, she's not really known to be an actress as far as I'm aware, but at points, she does actually give a believable performance, especially as these two are brothers and sisters and they're just trying to chase this dream. And that is another positive I have of this kind of dream that they were chasing, because by all means, I can relate in terms of like YouTube is a very passionate and a dream of mine to actually do this and speak to you guys in front of the camera. So in terms of that and like chasing your goal, and I believe that is certainly a relatable goal that anyone could kind of buy into, because we all have our own respective dreams. But unfortunately, with all that in mind, I do have to say there's quite a few negatives to this movie. One of them being, again, I could see at points Michael J. Fox was a bit miscasted in this movie. Don't say he's terrible, because by all means he isn't terrible, but I think for like kind of the character that they've written, because this character of Joe Rasnick that he plays, he is essentially a middle person in between this family, because Joan Jett's character of Pat has this son, but then the mum disapproves of her being a mother because she isn't really a mother at times. She's more about chasing her dreams than actually being a mother. So he's kind of like the middle ground, being like, well, yeah, he does side with Pat characters a couple of times, but then sometimes he sides with Jeanette, the mother. But in terms of being like more of a kind of grittier character and that kind of like rockabilly lifestyle, he didn't have it 100%. I will say that. And then also Joan Jett acting at points, yeah, it was terrible. I was trying to give her a bit of a benefit out for sure. And again, at times it's not too bad, but at points it isn't great. And I think ultimately what lets this movie down is the plot line and the script writing, because our cast were trying to do the best with the material they were given, but the material isn't great. So ultimately it doesn't make for a great movie. And I think because Paul Schrader was so inclined to try have Bruce Springsteen in this movie and call it Born in the USA, and because all that didn't come to fruition, and in the studio meddling to try and get Michael J. Fox and adamant to get him cast, I don't think the styles meshed that well, and unfortunately it didn't make for a great movie. So with all that in mind, my overall score for Light of Day is... So if you've enjoyed this review, please give it a big thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. But what I'd like to know from you is, have you seen Light of Day? If you have, leave any and all comments below, and I will leave a link in my description box, because you can actually watch this movie on YouTube for free if you are interested. But until the next time that I see you, I'll be seeing you later.